Hey guys, it's Benjamin with Benjamin's Exotics, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to get ball pythons to eat and accept frozen thawed rodents. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about getting ball pythons to switch from eating live rodents over to frozen thawed prey. I think that as ball python keepers, whether you're breeding or just keeping a ball python as a pet, one of the biggest goals and achievements that people want to hit and achieve with their ball pythons is getting their animals to eat frozen thawed prey. We actually have some rodents thawing out right now, and frozen thawed rodents are, let's just forget about the fact that it's more humane for the rodents just for a second. Frozen thawed rodents are going to be safer for the snake. They are more affordable for you as the keeper. You can literally buy them in tens of thousands from online sources. So let's think about things like Rodent Pro, Perfect Prey, Cold Blooded Cafe, different companies like that, and you don't have to have cages for them. You literally can store 6 months worth of food in one small freezer and you're gonna be good to go. However, ball pythons can be quite particular, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get these guys to actually accept frozen thawed prey. So right off the bat, one of the easiest ways to get ball pythons to accept frozen thawed prey throughout their entire life, in my own opinion, is to have an animal that has never experienced a live rodent ever. I would say about 40 to 60% of all of the ball pythons that I have produced and that we've sold on Morph Market and other places have all been animals that have never experienced a live rodent in their life. I've had some animals before where you start them out on live, like a live pinky or fuzzy rat, or maybe like a live hopper mouse, and then they'll eat frozen thawed. You can get them on a frozen thawed, but then like 3 or 4 months down the line, they want to switch back to live. Whereas if you start on an animal and it only experiences a frozen thawed meal from its first meal onwards, that animal is going to be incredibly unlikely to ever want and desire a live rodent. So what I actually do, and this is my first stage, and this is more for breeders, this first tip of how to get your animals to eat frozen thawed, is I actually had a clutch hatch out. So this is basically the first clutch for the 2020 breeding season. So you have 200101 all the way through 200108. So we had 8 babies in the clutch, and last week I came in here, and this is the first trick, and I couldn't even believe that this worked a few seasons ago when I tried this, but you come in and you take a tub like this. So let's kind of demonstrate this. Let's say I had a snake in a tub like this. This is of course empty, but what I literally do is I'll take my tub out like this, you know, neat little setup, and I'll take a frozen thawed, this is actually a fuzzy rat, make sure I dry it off a little bit, and I will literally just have like the set it and leave it method. I'll put it, typically I want to have the snake be in the hide, so a snake out like that would probably not be the best one to do this trick on, but maybe a setup more like that, where the snake is actually hiding under its paper in its hide. You will leave the rodent in like this, and you come back in an hour or two, and you would be surprised how many ball pythons will take prey just like that. And then typically you'll do this trick once or twice, where you will leave the rodent in there, a warm rodent that is frozen thawed, and they will come here and they'll eat this, and after 1 or 2 times they will normally switch to eating frozen thawed right off of a tong. Very simple, and we actually just did that for this baby. Like I said, I came in here last week and I did this exact trick on 7 of the 8 snakes. I forget what was going on with this one, but we didn't try to feed 08. We just did 01 through 07, and out of those 7 babies, 02, 04, which is on the end right there if it'll focus, and 07 all took frozen thawed prey just laid in the tub like that, and that is excellent. So now those animals, if they continue to eat frozen thawed, have not experienced a live rodent and hence are probably not going to desire live rodents in the future. And I literally just did this, and we're going to do this again. I came into 07's enclosure and I just tried to feed that animal off the tong, and it took it perfectly. And I'm going to try it one more time on camera with, actually this is 02. So we're going to try it on 200102. We kind of want to be as quick as possible. And I'm going to grab another rodent that's actually been warmed up a little bit. So we'll grab That's a decent one right there. A little bit of freezer burn, but that won't hurt anything. I'm gonna dry that rodent off, and this is actually a normal. So I'm gonna come in here, open the tub, and you can see this snake is quite apprehensive, maybe a little bit camera shy, a little bit worried about what's going on, and I'm gonna try to keep my hand out of the frame as much as possible so the snake doesn't pick up on my heat signature. Offer the rodent, if the camera would focus. Just so, oh, see, that's a defensive strike. And defensive strikes can turn into food strikes. You just have to, oop, that looked more like a food strike right there. Come on. Might want to be a little bit more. There we go, just like that. So, as you can see, the snake was a little bit apprehensive at first, a little bit uneasy, but with some persistence, we got this snake. So this snake last week ate using the drop method, and as you guys can see, this snake has now taken a frozen thawed rodent, sorry for the blood, right off of the tongue. So, from this point forward, if this animal continues this pattern and doesn't ever desire a live rodent, this is excellent. And this animal, I would never expect to have a problem taking frozen thawed prey items in the future. Now let's say that what I just described is not your situation. So either you have a baby ball python, just like that cute little cinnamon right there that just got scared when I went up on it. So you have a baby ball python and it either won't eat a frozen thawed rat, so you have tried the drop and leave it method, you've tried just getting the snake to eat a frozen thawed rodent normally, and it will not eat a frozen thawed rodent, it's stuck on live, or you have an adult animal or any animal above, let's say 200 to 300 grams would be considered like a really well started ball python, and it's been eating live for a while and you're trying to get it to switch to frozen thawed. There are a bunch of tricks you can use. There are a bunch of different little techniques here and there that I could tell you guys about, but most of these techniques are going to be kind of a hit and miss big time, and I think if anything they stress the snake out more than help at all. You can, of course, even for adults, you can try the drop and leave it method. Actually, when I got this cinnamon female right here, she would not eat frozen thawed prey, and normally all it takes is one experience, one time of that snake eating frozen thawed, and it will then recognize frozen thawed as a prey item and it will start to eat it. So like with this girl, I literally did the drop and leave it method even though she's an adult, and she took down the frozen thawed, I think it was a medium rat, and then ever since she's been on eating frozen thawed rodents normally, not having to drop it in the enclosure. So you can do that, you can try feeding at different times of the day, so on and so forth, but really what you want to focus on is the three main things that are going to try to teach your snake that frozen thawed is actually a prey item, because when a ball python doesn't eat a frozen thawed rodent or it doesn't accept that as a prey item, it's not because it's not hungry, it's not because the snake doesn't really like frozen thawed, it's literally because in the psychology of the ball python it doesn't recognize it as something that is edible, it doesn't recognize it as prey, and most of the time it will actually recognize it as the opposite of prey, so basically a predator. We see this not only with ball pythons, but with things like water snakes. If you guys have ever tried to bring into captivity things like water snakes, garter snakes, even anacondas, these animals in the wild are eating things like fish, frogs, birds, toads, things that don't really, they're not even close to a rodent, and sometimes it can be really hard getting, let's say, a banded water snake to take rodents in captivity. It's the exact same thing as with the ball pythons, except that we're talking about the scent, or the scent difference between a live rodent and a defrosted rat or mouse. So your job is to teach this snake that this is not a predator, it's not a just random animal that's trying to mess with you. It is literally a prey item that it wants to eat. And there are three elements to doing so. So let's look at the first aspect of getting your snake to eat a frozen thawed prey item, which is going to be the heat signature of your prey. Now, when we're talking about rats and mice, a really good kind of estimate for a good temperature that you want to have them at when offering to your snake is about 105 to 110 degrees. That might sound a little bit warm, but that is enough to easily get your snake interested in the prey item. And typically what I would do is I'll take a bucket like I just had out, we put it away, but you take a bucket of, like I said, about 105 to 110 degree water. Not any hotter than that, because you actually cook the rodent a little bit, and a cooked rodent will definitely not be appealing to the scent of your snake. It will be a different scent from just a normal raw, well, I shouldn't say raw, but a normal fresh rodent. Cooked is not good in any way. But basically, you want to dip it in that water at 105 or 110 degrees, and that will be more than enough to get you the actual body temperature of your rodent for just 15 or 20 seconds to be in the mid to upper 90s, and that is exactly what you want for your ball python's scent. If you guys can actually see in the front of their head, those little tiny kind of pink slots in the front of the snake's face. That's not the snake's nose, that's actually heat pits that pick up heat. So heat is critical when you're doing this. Also, you do not want to use your hand ever. I like something like this. This is 12-inch long hemostat. This is perfect because I can actually have my hand far enough away, because sometimes if you use like a small hemostat, so like a 2 or 3 inch hemostat or some sort of small tongs, if the snake sees your hand too close to the rodent, it will not differentiate, it will not tell the difference between the rodent in your hand, and it will actually think that the prey item you're offering is way bigger than it actually is. And of course, a snake that size is not going to take a prey item the size of my hand, so make sure that there is a clear distance from your frozen thawed rodent and the hand you are using to offer the prey to your snake. Now the second element is also very important, is going to be scent. Like I've said before, the scent of a frozen thawed rodent is not the same thing as the scent of a live rodent. So what you can actually do, go to your local pet store or any sort of breeder that has like live mice, live rats, either one will do, and we'll talk about really quickly in a second the difference between rats and mice in terms of scent. But what you'll do is, let's say I had a rodent, you'll actually bury it down in the bedding of the bedding that you will get. So literally, you go to a pet store, you ask them for their dirty rat bedding that's had rat feces, rat whatever in it, okay, and you bury your frozen thawed rodent in that dirty bedding. Of course, not in your snake's enclosure, but you bury that down, and that will make that frozen thawed rodent have the scent of a live rat. Now, if you do have a very picky feeder that's really giving you a problem, you might try to use mouse shavings instead of rat, even if you're feeding a rat. So even if you have a live, or I should say a frozen thawed fuzzy rat, you might still want to scent with mouse shavings, because mice, if you ever keep mice, they're much more smelly than rats, and their scent is a lot more potent, and typically it will get the interest of the snake a lot quicker than the scent of a rat, even though both can be triggers. And then the last aspect of getting your snake interested in eating a frozen thawed rodent is going to be the locomotion and the, I guess, motor skills that you put on that rat or mouse. I see so many times people are trying to get their snake to eat frozen thawed, and they're basically taking the rat by the tail and dangling it over the snake. I do that for a lot of my snakes that you see that have white tags that are all eating frozen thawed, but when we're trying to get a snake to eat live, that is not natural at all. And if anything, you know, lots of the times when a snake doesn't want to eat a frozen thawed rodent, it's not doing that, like I said, because the snake isn't hungry or because it doesn't like frozen thawed. It's really doing that because it either one, doesn't recognize frozen thawed as a prey item, and not only will it see the frozen thawed prey item as not edible, not as something to eat, but it will also many times see it as a predator. So if you take that rodent and you're now dangling it by the tail, which is not natural, it's not how its prey normally moves, and you're dangling it over its head, you are basically insinuating and replicating what would happen if would there be a bird or a big predator kind of leaning over this snake trying to eat it. So that is absolutely horrible. Do not do that if you're trying to get a snake to eat frozen thawed. You want to take the rat or mouse by the scruff of the neck, and literally it's all going to come down to your skill of acting as if that rodent is actually alive and trying to keep your hand out of the frame of the detection for the heat of the snake, if that makes any sense. And typically, we want to wait till a snake is in a hide to feed it if we're trying to get it to feed frozen thawed. So you might just take the head of the mouse or the rat and stick it in here, because now the snake has no view of you, no view of your hand. You stick it in there, it will very easily get triggered and take it that way. Or if you're using something like paper, that's not a good example. If you're using something like paper, you come in from the side. So you come in from the side of the snake where the snake is still. The paper will be your guard from the snake actually physically seeing you. Offer it to the snake, and you have to try to do your best to replicate the locomotion and action of that rodent. Before we end off the video, I will say this. I know a lot of people want their snakes to eat frozen thawed, and that is great. Frozen thawed, like I talked about in the beginning of the video, is superior to live in practically every way. However, you can cause not only physical trauma, but psychological trauma to a snake. So sometimes, if you guys have ever seen the horrific pictures of when a snake gets attacked by a rat, so essentially somebody leaves like a small or a medium rat in the enclosure with a snake, and after a day or two, that rat will start to chew on and beat up and try to actually eat your snake. Sometimes when that happens to a snake with a live rodent, the snake actually becomes so petrified it will never eat live again, and sometimes they'll never even want to eat whatever it was that attacked them. So even if it's a frozen thawed mouse or rat, they may never want to eat again. And the exact same thing can happen if you're trying to get your snake to eat frozen thawed. So if you're coming in every single week, just, pounding that snake and really harassing that snake, trying to get it to eat frozen thawed, even though in your mind you might be saying, okay, the more times that I try, the more chance that the snake will actually take a frozen thawed rodent. It can actually be the opposite. If you hound the snake too much with frozen thawed, you may turn a switch on in that snake's head and burn into its brain that frozen thawed is not something to eat, and it's something to be feared. So when you go to offer your ball python frozen thawed rodents, whether it be a mouse or a rat, don't do it. Don't hound them with it. Don't. I guess the best way to say it is you want to do it in bursts. So if I'm having a snake that's about this size, and let's say it's eating live once a week, I might come through in 1 or 2 weeks of the month, try frozen thawed, and if it doesn't take a frozen thawed 1 week, the very next week, try live. If you starve your snake out and you teach this snake, because these are pretty smart animals for what they are, and if you teach this snake that a frozen thawed rodent is something to be feared, you will have 0 chance of getting this snake to eat frozen thawed rodents consistently throughout its life. And then to kind of finish off this segment of the video, the kind of bad news and the, I guess, bear of this entire thing is that some ball pythons just will not accept frozen thawed rodents at all, and you may have to feed your ball python live for the rest of its life. The best way to get a ball python that is, going to eat frozen thawed is make sure you buy one that is already eating frozen thawed. If that is a, make or break for you in keeping your pet snake, don't go out and buy a snake like this that was eating live when I purchased it. Make sure that you get a snake that is eating frozen thawed and has had consistency in eating frozen thawed. And if you're trying to produce stuff, again, like we talked about in the beginning of the video, get a snake that is eating frozen thawed from birth, has never eaten a live rodent in its life. And to finish off today's video, I know somebody will hopefully appreciate this, and this is just a little update on some of the other breeding projects, if you will, that we're doing here at Benjamin's Exotics, and this is it. So we actually just within the last few days, actually I think it's been 3 days as of today, had all of these little baby mice be born from this mother. So I'm gonna be a little bit careful because sometimes they're not sometimes they're not in the best mood when you're messing with their babies, but that mom was the I guess mother, and of course the other one, the darker kind of gray guy, is the father. So really cute little babies. And even though today's video was a video about feeder rodents and getting your snake to actually eat rodents as a, frozen thawed rodents as a food source, I can't stress enough whenever we're talking about this stuff, I always get somebody down in the comments that says, oh, it's so cruel to feed rodents and all this stuff, and you guys just, are animal abusers and stuff like that. Just because we feed rodents to our animals does not mean in any way that we do not appreciate what they are. These are a food source, these are what we feed to our snakes, but man, these, look at little guy just trying to get away. Even though these are feeders, we still appreciate them, we still respect them, and I don't know about you guys, but I really think that these baby mice are something else and a really cute addition for our breeding projects here at Benjamin's Exotics. So I hope you guys did enjoy and most importantly benefit from today's video. If you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.